Let's call to order the Water and Sewer Commission meeting of October 11th, 2022. Let's open it up for commissioners' public forum. Is anybody here for that? Hearing none, moving on. Cam, if you can do the minutes and abatements.
All right, I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes for review from the September 13th meeting.
Any discussion on that? Can I get a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, Peter.
Mr. McLean,
Aye.
Mr. Coleman,
Aye.
and Mr. Cantwell.
All right, moving on to the warrants for review and signature. I'd like to make a motion to approve the October 11th warrants totaling $60,982.87.
Does anybody have any discussion about any of these things? How about a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, Peter.
All right, Mr. McLean,
Aye.
Mr. Coleman,
Aye.
and Mr. Cantwell.
Vinny, scheduled appointments and monthly operating report.
Yes, we'll be covering the monthly operating report for August 2022. The plant was staffed by myself, Dylan Moriarty, and we hired on Grant Krisiak, who started in the month of August. Veola's monthly inspection was completed on the 4th. Training was on PPE, Employee Essentials. It's has an OSHA annual hearing protection involved in that. Compliance for the month, the DMR was completed and entered into the CDX on September 15th. We had 2 exceedances. Our ammonia was just a little over our limit, and the BOD was also over limit. Operations and maintenance activities. August, we did the annual fire extinguisher certifications. That's where they come in, they inspect them all, they replace any defective ones and retag them. We did RBC proficiency testing and balanced the RBC flows. Toxicity samples were collected and sent out for testing. We worked with Trojan Technologies and we had a Zoom meeting with them and staff from Veolia and the technical performance team. And the topic of the meeting was they did a collimated beam test for us. It's where they took a sample of water and broke it into a bunch of small samples and kept treating it with different doses of UV to see if they could kill all the bacteria. And the sample that we had collected and sent them, they could not kill all the bacteria in. Later on in the month of August, we figured a few other things out and got the plant running better, but that was the main thing for the month. LaFleur Electric came in to troubleshoot the plant's ventilation system. They replaced a few timers and they reprogrammed them all so they work together. So the ventilation is the exhaust fans and the makeup air, and they have it all working. About every 2 hours, they turn on and cycle the air through the plant. And that's also helping with our ammonia limit. It's bringing fresh air into the plant for the RBCs to work a little better. All the major chemicals we use in the plant, we printed out the up-to-date SDS sheets and put them in little binders with the chemicals. So if there's any questions, the answers are at the chemical stations. The Veolia technical team recommended a trial dosing of hypo to the secondary clarifiers. The intention of that was to kill off any extra bacteria before it got to the COMAG process. And they also recommended we sample the plant water system for E. coli. And the result of that was there were over 600 colonies per 100 milliliters in the plant water. And we used the plant water to move chemicals through the plant and to rinse things and wash stuff in the plant. Not a great place to have E. coli hanging out, so we've come up with a way to take care of that too. The new lab equipment showed up. You guys approved it a few months ago. It's called the DR6000. It's made by Hawk. It's a benchtop colorimeter, and it has a lot of capabilities. We purchased some COD test kits a few months ago that we weren't able to use in the lab equipment we had. And since we got the DR 6000, we've been using those COD test kits daily, and we can actually spot when heavy loads are coming into the plant. The collection system activities, we replaced the water meter at 65 Lakeview Drive. And that's it for that. Pump station activities. The weekly rounds were completed, every pump station. We tested the floats, the ones with generators, we ran the generators, and we tested the dial assistance. Burlingame Pump Station, we added 55 gallons of fuel. Route 20 Pump Station, we took the pump apart to remove more baby wipes. And the check valve, we also had to take it apart because it wasn't sealing. And we pulled a ton of stuff out of there, and there was actually a half of a mop head wedged into that check valve. It's crazy, the stuff that gets down there. North Main Street, the generator failed to start. We tested the battery voltage. It was at 12.5 volts. We called Hilltop Equipment Service. They came out, and during their troubleshooting, they load tested the battery. And he said when he put his load tester on it, the battery voltage would drop right out to almost nothing. And as soon as he'd take it off, the voltage would come back up. So we ended up putting a new battery in, and it worked okay. For sludge of the month of August, we hauled 8 loads to Cranston. Our chemicals, we received 2 275-gallon totes of caustic. We received 2 tons of magnetite, and we got 4,447 gallons of ferric chloride. Grinder pump calls for the month. We went to 61 Sunset Drive. The owner called about sewer backing up into the downstairs bathroom. When we got there, we pulled the cover off the tank, and the tank was at the low float, which is where it turns off. And she said the sewage was still backed up in the house, which that's nothing we really get involved with. We recommended she called an outside contractor and have them try to snake the drain. Then the other grinder pump call was 75 North Sturbridge Road. It was an updated system. We went out, there was grease in the tank, and we had Slims come out and clean it. That concludes the MOR for August 2022. Any questions?
If any, eight loads of sludge hauled out, is that normal or is that high?
Last year, we pulled 8 loads every single month.
All right, okay. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was that UV test where they tested our water with the light and they broke it up into things and they couldn't kill all the bacteria. Is that a common thing, or is that?
That's a really special test. This was the first time I had ever heard of it. I don't know all the specifics of it other than they broke the samples we sent them into a bunch of smaller ones, and they kept increasing the UV dosage trying to kill off the bacteria, and they couldn't. But the other part of that is there's a test that we do here called the UVT, which is UV transmittance. It's how much light can pass through the water. And at that time, our UVT was in the 50s and 40s. And since we've straightened out a few process issues, our UVT is up in the 70s, and you only need a 60 to kill E. coli.
Okay,
So ever since we straightened out the process issues, we've been having a UVT in the 70s, and our E. coli's have been really low.
thank you. Anybody else having more questions? All right. Hearing none, moving on. Thank you, Vinny. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Peter, our 6:45 appointment.
Yes, everybody's here. So we have Tyson Ross, Moira Johnson from Kleinfelder Engineering. They're here to give us an update on the closing out process for the water line extension they did for the school loop. Chris McClure is also here to, I guess, give us any information from his side as well. So I guess I can just hand it over to Tyson if you want to go ahead and take it away.
Sure. So the water services are near their completion. There are about 153, 154 that were ultimately installed. That contract is now being closed out and will be closed out with the contractor by the end of the month. The water main contract, of course, is closed out. The Bay Path and Overlook Pump Station projects have been closed out. 169 is closed out. So we're now ending the end of the program.
Yeah, and if you, this is Maura, if you want the final count, there's 144 properties that have been trenched. So those were the agreements that were signed by property owners to agree to the terms of ExxonMobil. Those are 144 private properties, and then then on top of that includes Bay Path, Middle School, Heritage, and Overlook. As part of that ExxonMobil agreement, it required that the resident allow ExxonMobil to either abandon the potable well or allow ExxonMobil to use it as a sentinel well. So as part of the services, we've also been abandoning those private wells and pulling the permits through the Charlton Board of Health.
Fantastic. Anybody on the commission have any questions? Or Peter?
Sure. Tyson or Maura, can you guys just give an update on what's going on with the pressure fluctuations at the Bay Path pump station and what steps are being taken to resolve those?
Sure. So the pressures at the pump station, or the booster station rather, under looped flow have been not an issue. Under linear flow, of course, is when the Bay Path pump station saw low pressure in conjunction with a fire that also caused a low pressure. Since the water mains have been looped, there have not been any low pressure issues that I've received from the school at all. In the meanwhile, we have been designing and informing the Bay Path School about the hydropneumatic tanks. Although the pressures are acceptable under looped flow, we are going to install hydropneumatic tanks in an effort to help out with the school under more operating circumstances. The school has received our proposed method to update the booster station. They have reviewed it. We have sized the tanks. We've spoken with Albanese. We've spoken with Kent Plumbing, and we are prepared to put together a construction change directive to install a tank in the booster station itself on the suction side and in the Bay Path boiler room itself on the discharge side.
So with those improvements, are we going to be able to run that water main extension in the directional flow?
So as far as we're concerned, the intent of the water mains is to be looped. The use of hydropneumatic tanks in the sizing that we're posing, and please remember that Bay Path is limited to how large of a tank can be installed in there, but we may be able to survive the hydraulic hammer for upwards of a minute or two as hydraulic hammer goes by under linear flow.
So,
Sorry,
Chris,
Tyson, let me interject here real quick. So from my understanding, the system was designed to be in a linear flow, and the last user was to be the Overlook or the Masonic home. That's not your understanding?
Correct. That is not our understanding.
Chris, can you interject here a little
Yeah,
bit?
Chris.
Yeah, so let me just go a couple things, Tyson. So since our meeting up at the Bay Path High School, you haven't gotten any notices from the school regarding low pressure shutdowns?
Correct. Yes, Chris.
And that one of the modifications that was made was the adjustment on that on a delay, I believe that Tim made because we were getting some random ones, and we were all concerned when the school started that it may become more prevalent, but maybe that adjustment there has has created, well, I guess the delay wasn't as long or something, so that adjustment was good. Did they ever look at, did they ever take a look at the discrepancies between the PLC and the actual pressure gauge in that pump house? Was that ever revisited? Do you know?
That has not been revisited, no.
Okay. Is there plans? Is there plans for that?
Not currently. I've been working on the hydropneumatic tank sizing and talking about that with Carlson.
And then additionally, we talked about having Newberry potentially involved to look at the hydraulic model that, you know, well, we had the hydraulic model, obviously, and now that the system's up and going, Newberry is going to take a look at the, I guess, recalibrate that model with actual operating conditions. Is that still in the works?
Yes, it is.
It is, okay. And so let's go back to, just go back to the linear versus looped flow. So when the, you know, the reason for Overlook coming online was to obviously move water through that water system. And in order to do that, to, you know, to achieve both the minimize the retention time in the water system, so that they wouldn't have to blow off water. That was the ideal. And obviously we all know that, you know, looped versus linear is preferred mode of operation. But in this instance, due to the fact that the water system is on the outskirts of Southbridge water and the issues that they had with water tank, water age, the key connection there was Overlook, right? So that was going to be the big user at the end of the straw. I think there's, you know, there's documentation that, you know, that the details of that and the reason why that was going to be the case. So, so when we go with this loop flow, the water system is, you know, they're having to blow off water, which is not you know, ideal for anybody. So we're as far as potentially with Newberry looking at this information, is there options, i.e. potentially putting on that tank that would allow this system to operate so that they're not having this, you know, this blow off situation that needs to occur, or the system could potentially run in a linear versus a loop flow configuration?
So I guess there's a few things to respond to. First thing is water mains, of course, are intended to be looped. With the size of the water mains available to not negatively affect the water age, the water mains needed to go from 12 inches to 8 inches.
Yeah.
That, of course, at the end of a long straw creates an issue hydraulically, where the system has a historic issue with hydraulic swing and hammer in the system, and there not being any release built into the system to handle hydraulic hammer. The operational preference and best management practice is to operate in a loop fashion. We suggest to the operators that the system be looped, and that is proven to be the best way to handle the system that we had to add on to. So with the hydraulic hammer being a historical issue, this addition of a couple miles of pipe in a linear fashion will only exacerbate that. So looped flow is highly suggested. The residual issue, which is also a historic issue, is something that we have not added to nor taken away from. the usage within the water mains is showing that there is a similar water age to the water both before and after this project. So that historical low residual issue has neither really been hindered nor helped. If there were more people that connected, it may have helped. But of course, we are limited to people's right to refuse a connection. So word this carefully. So the project wasn't necessarily intended to eliminate the historical low residual issue, but there was a hope that with a large water usage, that low residual may be better managed and your water age may be reduced.
Isn't that why we put the overlook at the end of the system on the linear flow, so that we would have that water get moved through the system on a daily basis, so we won't have that issue?
So there is a discrepancy in documentation. The models that we had run were run to show different operating conditions. One of the large concerns during the design of this project was that there is a low residual issue, and the best way to manage the activation of the water mains or the timing of opening the water mains was a large concern. And with that large concern of how to activate the water mains that already have a low residual issue, the plan to activate the water mains was to have the usage as high as possible. The highest possible usage for activation was to have the overlook placed at the end of the line as a large user so that the mains could be activated while people connected. Now that people have connected in the final condition, the activation is complete and the proposed method to operate it should be looped. So there's a difference between activating the mains new versus operating them after they've been activated.
So,
And that's
Mr.
where
Chair-
there is a discrepancy between what is believed as a proposed operation of the water mains.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Peter, please.
I think Tyson might be confused because he might not have been involved in all the meetings prior to the design. I mean, Tyson, you can shake your head no all you want. However, sitting in the meetings before you were on board, when Charlie Tripp was there, who was designing the system, and they were installing valves so that this system could be operated linear flow, one direction, so that the overlook was the end user, so that we could help resolve these residual issues, is how this project got approved. And why the town was willing to take a system that wasn't operating at 100% capacity or 100% well, and allow ExxonMobil to extend it to help solve the water contamination problem, because it was going to be done in a way that would help alleviate the contamination and also help with our water age concern, which is why we're so focused on this linear flow. And that's why everything in that system is designed and valved so that it can go in one way and out the other, with the overlook being the end user, to make sure that we don't have a water age issue.
Where I will,
Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, because you were there longer than I was.
I've been involved and I have since the beginning of time. And that was the intent. The intent was to make sure that everybody knew it wasn't the ideal. It wasn't, if you were to draw this out, but this was the way that and it was a big push to get Overlook to come on just for this reason, because they were all set. They had a public water supply. They didn't want it. And so the push was there, as we need you to create that big, that big user at the end, so that we can keep this water fresh through the system in this linear flow. And there's been a discussion all throughout.
so to respond, the valves that were installed in the entire system were installed in such a way that the operators can choose to operate either in a linear fashion or in a looped fashion. That valve configuration is not a statement of how final operation should be. The valve design was intended to give the operators the full capability of operating the system how they chose in as many ways as possible. So I would not infer that the 5-way gate cluster is a statement of final operation. That 5-way cluster is designed to give all possible operating conditions that the system may need.
Great, so we can operate it in linear flow then, because that's how it was designed.
I'm not going to say that's how it was designed.
But the valves are there. The
can
valves are
operate
there
in
for that
linear flow,
purpose, to
100%.
operate in linear flow.
Yeah,
So
if the
if
system
Whitewater decides tomorrow to operate that in linear flow and the Bay Path pump station loses water, what does that mean?
That means that the water supply is not enough. So this main was intended as a domestic flow. And it was initially looked at as being a 12-inch water main, which would have taken care of a lot of the pressure concerns of this project. That sizing of a 12-inch water main was so large that the water age would have crashed considerably. That is why the mains changed from a 12-inch main to an 8-inch main. With an 8-inch main being fed by so many miles of smaller pipe, it does not lend the system to a linear preference.
So the water pressure gauges you have in the system, are they still out there now, or are they just out there for, you said you put them out a couple of weeks ago, correct? The data loggers?
Yep.
Are they still there? Are you still collecting data?
Nope, they've been collected,
How many days of data do you have?
several.
Several. And is that with Dewberry now, or is Kleinfelder correlating that data before it gets sent over?
I am taking a look at that data before it gets sent over.
And what is the, what are you hoping to find with that data? Or what are you hoping the outcome of this hydraulic model will be?
I don't have any specific hope or outcome. I have data that will be reviewed to obtain data.
Is that data looking at the ability to open up H. Putnam Road extension fully so that we can help with some of these pressure fluctuations as that was designed to do?
That data is not collected for that purpose. That data is collected to get a view as to whether or not the models that we had done during design were in fact accurate, and if not accurate, that they could be updated.
So,
H. Putnam, however, is a pipe that was designed to help alleviate the hydraulic hammer in the system. With that pipe not being in full use, that does not help the hammer. That pipe was installed, designed, and built to aid in the hydraulic hammer. However, it does shortcut the tank, and I can understand why you wouldn't want to utilize it as much, but that pipe is intended to help with hammer. So if that pipe were to be on,
Yep.
then the issues with low pressure under linear flow would not be as exacerbated.
but we would have to have a water blow off running on J. Hammond Road tank because of the water age issues there.
Yep.
Sounds like we're in a lose-lose situation to me here, Tyson.
It's a difficult situation. The
Yeah.
system, yes, agreed.
Yeah, so I guess, how do we all come together and do the best thing for the town and get this situation resolved? I believe, from what I understand and what I know to be true, is that the system was designed for linear flow. It makes sense that the overlook's at the end. I know we just talked about that, but again, I wasn't at the meetings and you weren't either, but there are people here that have that information, and it makes sense. The hydraulic hammer that you talked about that was in the lines was in the lines when you guys, designed the whole system. That wasn't a secret that already existed. I'm assuming that you took that into play when things were engineered. So where do we go from here and how do we get this resolved?
So I guess that would be a question as to what it is you're looking for. Where this project is an administrative consent order that is agreed to by all parties, I am not capable, nor will I say what we can do. It is a project that has more bosses than is what is sitting in this room. So I cannot say or state what we can do. What I can do, though, is collect data and study the system and provide a professional opinion. The system as it is taxed. It has been for a while, and we added on to it. So as much as I do understand that there is a desire to have linear flow, we have proven through data collection that linear flow is not advisable under the current tank settings, tank sizing, and pipe sizes. So by having linear flow, you are putting the bay path at risk. So you have a balancing issue.
Yeah, but then we have a blow off all the time, right? So I mean, we got to either have a blow off all the time or we're running a different flow, right? I mean, because that blow off is a big deal. If we're blowing off for 4 or 5 months a year. I mean, that's an issue.
It is. I don't disagree with that.
So I guess I'm trying to do both things. I'm trying to get the blow off to stop, and I'm trying to get the Masonic home to be the end user, and I'm trying to get the Bay Path pump station to work. So how do we make that happen?
So the installation of the tanks at the Bay Path are intended to solve the Bay Path issue. At first, it will be a short-term measure, and if that shows that it is effective, they can stay in the pump station and the school building as a long-term measure for Bay Path.
And that's in either flow, whether it's a loop flow or linear flow, those tanks are going to solve the Bay Path issue. Is that correct?
What those tanks will do is allow a hydraulic hammer to pass by the tank, by the booster station on a momentary basis. So as that hydraulic hammer moves through the pipes on the suction side of the booster station, there will be as large a hydropneumatic tank as we can install and fit in that space. That will supply a small amount of water to the pumps so that when the hydraulic hammer goes by and the pressure drops, that the tank will supply water to the pumps. That useful water out of that tank is only about 15 gallons. The maximum flow rate for the school on a peak hourly basis is 35 gallons per minute during their peak operation. So that coupled with another hydraulic tank, hydropneumatic tank in the boiler room itself, that will be sized for another 100 gallons so that the water pressure in the street can drop out for a minute and we can supply water to the school for upwards of a couple of minutes. But of course, this is dependent upon the elevation of the tank, the elevation and pressure in the hydropneumatic tanks, and the timing of the pumps to turn on under normal conditions.
Sorry, Tyson, I don't mean the
No, that's
thing.
okay.
I mean, so I guess my question is, will that solve is that we're trying to solve the problem whether we're in linear flow or in loop flow? Is that correct? Or are we trying to solve the problem just if we're in loop flow?
The intent is to minimize disruption during linear flow if the town chooses to go linear flow. However, being limited in its size and depending upon the conditions of the operating of the system, the tank, the hydropneumatic tanks, the timing of the pumps, it will be a minimized issue, but I will not say that it will be eliminated 100%.
Might work and it might not work.
It'll mostly work is what it'll do. There is the potential for the tank level to be low, for the hydropneumatic tanks to have been used slightly. And if there isn't enough pressure in the hydropneumatic tanks as a system drop occurs, then there is a possibility of there being a shutdown. However, those shutdowns really depend on, the stars to align, let's say, to have the hydropneumatic pressure down and the tank feed level down while the system is being requested to be turned on.
Chris,
Tyson,
do you have
can
anything else?
actually- Tyson, can you share that latest data that was collected with Chris and myself?
I'll get
From the
back to
data
you on it.
loggers?
Perhaps I'll have to get back to you on it.
So I really, this is Chris through the chair. So I really think this, the data and Dewberry's analysis. And I think the looking at that, there's infrastructure that was put online. It was infrastructure that's been waiting to go online, i.e. the large tank on the top of the hill here. Those were all included as part of this evaluation, for this, for this water system expansion in order for that to occur. I think all of those, in addition to what you're doing at the Bay Path pump station is great, but I really think based on the flow that the town is currently, experiencing on a day-to-day basis, the potential of putting that large tank online may have, extra as far as the getting water moving and also minimizing the fluctuation, the transients, pressure transients that we're seeing within the water system. So I think that's key. And obviously you guys are working to get Dewberry to do that. I mean, I know based upon my discussions with the Southbridge Water Department, if they haven't issued a letter already, their concern is even in the loop flow that this water system is dropping below the state minimum requirements. And I know that the DEP is also concerned about this as well. So I don't know. I know we're talking about the Bay Path pump station there. Peter's also seen data within the system that drops below that 20 PSI criteria. So I don't know how that's going to all play out, but I know that we're all, well, I say we, but we're all equal partners in ensuring that that everybody is happy with this, with the end results here. I think that's the bottom line. So. Have you heard of that concern, Tyson, from the Southbridge Water Department?
Not spoken as directly as you have, no.
Okay. Pete, have you heard Steve express that?
Yes.
So I
Yes,
really
but again, Chris, I think Tyson is working with Steve and Dewberry on his own without our direct input. So I'm not privy to the conversations he has with Steve or Peter Calderazzo from Dewberry.
So the data that we collected is intended to help with any and all of those studies or proposed ideas. That is the purpose of the data that we collected. That data that we collected was coordinated between Whitewater, Dewberry, and ourselves to collect the data that is most beneficial for Dewberry to model with Whitewater's approval.
that's a big variable in this discussion. I think for the commission to understand, that's really going to tell us, just shed some light. We're seeing operationally, we're seeing issues with the radar screen, but this will kind of bring a more holistic approach from that model. Basically bringing it up from where it was to where it is now, so that it sheds some light on the actual issues that we're seeing as a whole. So, would you agree with that, Tyson?
That's the purpose of the data collection, yes.
I just want, through the chair, I just want, the chairman and the commissioners to know that that's, it's not just the items you're taking care of at the Bay Path pump station. We're looking at this system, now that it's all up and running as a functioning unit, and same with the model and the experts who review this model will recommend.
Anybody else have any more questions?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on some process questions, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Peter.
Now that we're coming near the end of the project, I just kind of want to make sure we're on the same page and ask Maura or Tyson what's going to be required of the commission to accept that newly installed water line. Because I'm sure that's going to be coming down the road fairly soon, once the study's done and once all this other stuff gets ironed out.
Yep, as part of the settlement agreement, there was an attachment that has the transfer language in there. So I believe it is signatures from selectmen and the water commissioners. But that language was in that settlement agreement.
But in order for, again, that water line to transfer its ownership to the town has to sign off to accept it, correct?
Correct.
Then I guess that to stay on that note, I just really like to reiterate that in order for myself to recommend acceptance of this water line, there are 3 key issues that we need to have addressed before I'd recommend we do that. And again, that's something that Tyson and Moore are working on now, but I just want to make sure that we're crystal clear. 1 is the pressure fluctuations at Bay Path are taken care of. 2, the need for the water blow off at Heritage School is no longer required, so we can operate in linear flow and with having the overlook be the end user. And 2, that we can fully activate the H. Putnam Road water line as designed to help with any pressure fluctuation issues. So those are my 3 main concerns. And Chris, if you have any other concerns with the system currently, please, add to them now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the crux of it. We got to get to a system that the Southbridge isn't sending letters off to the state saying that it's not meeting the state minimum pressure requirements. And from an operational standpoint, that they need to, be able to flush their water lines, need to operate their system in a manner, that they can flush these lines. That H. Putnam, I think you're right on with that. Those are the three major items that we've discussed in the past, and that continue to be at the forefront to ensure that that the system is operating in a manner that's everybody's, that's meeting everybody's needs. So.
Okay. I've noted what you said, some of the things we may disagree with, that if they were already operational issues previously. So, but I
Yeah,
wrote down what you said about the 3 items.
Thank you. And I'm sure there's going to be discussion to be had. I just don't want to wait until we're in the final steps of that to say it, and then all of a sudden it's a surprise.
Correct.
I know we've been going back and forth with these, and I'm sure we'll consider to do so. But I think it's going to be a work in progress, and I think the more that we can kind of keep this open communication going between yourselves, myself, Chris, and the board, the better off we're going to be coming to resolution. So I know you guys have some things you're doing now. The commission's meeting once a month. So if you guys don't mind, if you think 4 weeks, if you can come back and kind of provide an update to the commission again on what you're finding with tank design and what you're finding with Dewberry reviewing the data that was collected in the system. Does that time frame seem reasonable to have new information to present?
I can't confirm at this time, so we'll let you know.
Okay.
The other thing I just want to say is that is not Kleinfelder or ExxonMobil's responsibility to direct how the system is operated. So that is something that we will not want to continue discussing about recommending to Charlton or to Southbridge how to operate the system.
And we want like how it was designed.
I'm not asking you to recommend how we
No, I know.
operate. I'm asking that it can be operated in the manner that I believe it was designed, and all the discussions that I was involved with 6, 7 years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, the way it was designed, the way our engineer, Chris McClure, remembers it being designed and discussed is how I want this system to be able to operate. And in my discussions with Steve Gregoire, who is the operator, I believe he's on the same page as well. So again, I appreciate you guys coming and having this discussion and getting the board up to speed. I know we've had meetings over the last 6, 7, 8 years, some of those before my time. And now that the project's coming to an end, I know the board was involved back in 2017, and during the construction part, the board kind of took a back seat, let the construction take place. But now that we're coming to, seeing it operational and coming to the end where they're gonna have to sign off on it, I think it's important for them to be involved firsthand so that they can have their questions answered and just hear the information firsthand. So thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. All right, Peter, moving on. New business.
So I know it seems early, but we've been requested to submit our FY24 water and sewer budgets. I have copies of each of them attached to our agenda. The water budget, I'm recommending that we just present a level funded budget from FY23. In the packet that was given to you, you can see the budgets from FY21, 22, and 23. So you can see how we've pretty much been consistent over the last 4 years. And as far as the sewer budget goes, the salaries will be updated based on what the finance director and the town administrator talk about. And the only thing I would recommend we change for sewer budget is our maintenance equipment, an increase of 10%, just to maybe anticipate some increased cost in goods and supplies that we might have to get. And also an increase in our sewer plant operations line item of 12%. Other than that, everything else is level funded as it has been for the last 3 or 4 years. So it's pretty consistent to knowing what we're dealing with. The reason for the big jump in the sewer plant operations is this fiscal year coming up in November, based on our annual contract, they're going to do their annual CPI increase. And as we all know, with all the inflation going on, their CPI increase for this year is 6%. And then we're going to do the same thing next November as well. So I think this 12% will help cover the 6% for this year. I believe I planned for about 3 of that because I wasn't expecting the inflation to go as high as it did. But 12% for FY24 will help make up for any shortcomings this year, and also plan for the FY24 increase as well next November 23. So I just wanted
Fantastic.
to give
Do
this.
you need a motion for this, Peter?
If I could get a motion to forward, to approve it and send it off to the finance director and town administrator, that'd be great. And again,
Anybody have any questions?
this isn't going to be presented until the annual town meeting in May, so we're definitely way ahead of ourselves here. But again, luckily our budget's fairly straightforward. We have enough revenues to cover our expenses, so we're self-sufficient in that aspect for the sewer, and we're kind of good to go. I feel.
Anybody have any questions?
No, I do not, but I'll make the motion to approve the FY 2024 water and sewer budgets and move it to the finance director.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Peter, go ahead, please. Roll call vote.
Mr. McLam.
Aye.
Mr. Coleman,
Aye.
Mr. Jennings.
Russ, you're on mute. Maybe he's not on.
Russ, are you there? Mr. Cantwell.
Aye.
Excellent.
All right, moving on. Old business, water privilege fee.
Yes, as discussed at our last meeting, a copy of the updated water privilege fee policy is attached for your review. This is similar to our sewer privilege fee policy stating that if a property was assessed a betterment, then there will not be a privilege fee unless there is additional usage above and beyond what the betterment is for. So as discussed, actually, before we start discussion, I just want to reiterate that I own some property and my family owns properties that could be affected by this water privilege fee. There has been a disclosure filled out previously, and I just want to restate that for the commission's concern, if there's any concerns for me participating in this discussion.
There's no concerns, Peter.
So to be consistent, there were water betterments assessed back 2011, 2012. As part of those, part of our ExxonMobil agreement, those water betterments were paid off by the agreement with ExxonMobil. However, those water betterments were still assessed to those properties. Some of those property owners are coming forward to connect, whether they be on North Side Road or on Main Street or some parcels on Route 20. And because they previously received a betterment, and we have a list in our office of those who received a betterment, they probably should not receive a privilege fee as well. So there's just a little bit of a crux right there that we have to just determine where in sewer, it's spelled out in our sewer privilege fee attached. If there was a phase 2 betterment assessed, then there's no privilege fee. That way there, if someone creates a new lot that didn't receive a betterment, we can go ahead and assess them the sewer privilege fee. And we just like to clarify that if the board wishes to, we can clarify the water privilege fee with that same statement. If not, then any parcel moving forward, whether they received the betterment or not, would have to pay this privilege fee. And again, this is a policy that was adopted by the commission that can be amended or changed by the commission.
Yeah, we're basically putting this in writing, Peter, right?
Yes, again, I attached a water privilege fee with a red line version that takes out the original beginning and adds the language that's in the sewer privilege fee.
All right, fantastic.
So both
Should be much easier to
policies would be in line.
Correct, Mr. Jennings, both policies would be consistent.
All right. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the language so stated that it will be in line. So both will be consistent in the charging.
Any more discussions?
I have none,
Second.
so I will second that.
Roll call vote, Peter.
Mr. McLean,
Aye.
Mr. Coleman,
Aye.
Mr. Jennings,
Aye.
and Mr. Cantwell.
Aye.
Great.
All right, other business. Anybody have any other business? Next meeting,
November 8th, election day,
November 8th.
or do you want to do it on the 1st? I think there's something in the bylaws that say we can't meet on election day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so.
I'm not making that up.
all right, let's meet on
No, I
election day
think
then.
you're right, Peter.
Right, let's do November 1st to be safe.
All right, so November 1st.
Yes,
All right,
great.
somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make
I'll
a
make a
motion.
motion to adjourn. Second,
Okay,
Cam's
Russ.
motion.
Russ
Second
seconded it,
Cam's
so,
motion.
yeah, Peter, roll call vote.
All right, Mr. McLean,
Aye.
Mr. Coleman,
Aye.
Mr. Jennings,
Aye.
and Mr. Cantwell.
Aye.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
All right.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.